Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the I Am That Woman Movement and Retreat Conversation Series. It's Friday, February the 18th, and we are so blessed to be here yet another week. God has blessed us to see another Friday. Happy birthday to my sister, Tyree, the big milestone birthday. I won't say which one because you might kill me. And then happy birthday also to Lester Coleman, who joins our morning meditation and prayer and always leads us into our daily manna. So just wanted to say happy birthday to both of you and anyone else celebrating a birthday today. Happy birthday to you, and glad that God has blessed you with another 365 days around the sun. Well, as you guys know, if you follow me, I wasn't here last Friday because it was my birthday week and I was getting some much needed RNR. I took a page out of my own book and decided to get some much needed rest. So I took a 7-day vacation away from everything, turned the computer off. I only checked email for maybe 30 minutes one day and got snapped at when I did that. And so I encourage all of you to make sure that you schedule some me time. It's absolutely important and imperative. And that's what the I Am That Woman movement and retreat is all about. It's teaching you how to live your best life holistically, mind, body, and spirit. Yes, we are here to help you enjoy your life mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, in all ways. So, as you know, this month has been about the love that's in the air. Monday was February the 14th, Valentine's Day. I hope you got your candy and roses, or I hope you just loved on yourself and it was a great day. But recognizing this month being the month of love, we've been talking about relationships. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my sister, Valerie. Thank you so much, Minister Valerie, for standing in my stead last week. And we were talking about the psychology of relationships and especially the spiritual psychology of relationships, because I truly believe that the best relationship that you can have is one that is rooted and grounded in a strong spiritual foundation. So today we're going to continue that conversation, but a little differently. We're going to come with it from the male perspective. So my sister and I, we chatted it up and we talked about marriages and single women. For a while now, we've been talking about women becoming a wife before the wedding and the mature and married. So today, I decided to spin it a little bit. I decided that we needed to have a male perspective on the psychology of relationships. And what does that mean? How does the man, create the spiritual foundation in a marriage or in an engagement, or even when you first start dating? What does that look like from the male perspective? Well, I am blessed today. Thank you, Kathleen Blade Owens, the former secretary on our board of directors for the I Am That Woman movement. She, when I put this out there to the board, had the best person that could be with us today, Dr. Algean Garner II, who is a graduate of the Illinois School of Professional Psychology. He holds a doctoral degree in clinical psychology and is a practicing psychologist in Illinois and serves as director of behavioral health for a local community health center in Chicago. I'm super excited. We've been having some conversations about today's conversation, and I'm excited that he's decided to join us. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Dr. Garner on. Hello, sir.
Well, hello and good afternoon. And I wasn't nervous until about 30 seconds ago.
Well, it's all going to go away because we're going to start some great dialogue and conversation. Hopefully, we'll even have some of our guests to chime in on this conversation today. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I just read a little snippet of your bio. So tell us who you are and what you do.
I will do that. And happy belated birthday. And I really like your emphasis on self-care. I'm a big believer in that. And we cannot pour into others if we don't pour into self first. So, and that's a whole nother conversation. So,
I agree.
um, but I am a native Chicagoan, born and raised in Chicago on the South Side. South Side. I am the son of a now retired police officer, and my mother has been retired for several years, and she was an executive for a organization known as CRC, and they provided services for children and adults with developmental disabilities. So I'm kind of hardwired for nurturing and caretaking. I am a graduate of Mendel Catholic, which is no longer in existence.
Oh,
And as a native Chicagoan, that's kind of the classic question you get asked is find out you're from Chicago. It's like, where'd you go to high school?
the
Um,
first question.
that is the first question. And so after that, I graduated from Shaw University with my bachelor's in psychology, go HBCUs. Came
Yay.
back to Chicago, did my graduate work at the Illinois School of Professional Psychology. Wanted to venture out and lived in Houston, Texas for about 5 years, which was a lot of fun. But Chicago is home and returned home in 2002. And actually, who I work for now, I started my career as director of behavioral health, ventured out into a couple of other organizations, did a little bit of private practice, and now I am back home. And so here I am. I do a lot of work for around mood disorders, so depression, anxiety, stress
Mhm.
management. I have a specialty in family and couples counseling, and also do a lot of work with parent-child conflict.
Oh,
That's kind of me in
nice.
a nutshell.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing. And I see a shout out from Dina on Mendel. So I know she's a native Chicagoan as well. So you're right. That's the first question that you're asked. Are you from Chicago and what high school did you
Right,
go
right.
to? So
And we were known for the best house parties ever.
okay, I'll give you guys that. So, thank you for sharing a little bit of your background and where you are and what you do now. And, even talking about mental health right now, not only in Chicago, but, certainly around the country, it's been a big topic. I mean, more now than ever before. We see athletes, professional
Mhm.
athletes in the Olympics having to take some me time because of their mental health and wellness. It didn't used to be something that we talked about, but now, even since the pandemic, we've certainly been talking about our mental health and wellness and our emotional health and wellness. And today, of course, that ties into how we deal with relationships and the psychology of relationships. As you were saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So, how we're taking care of ourselves bleeds over into our relationships and how we're taking care of others. And so, from a male perspective, because that's what we're talking about today, so I'm going to try not to hog the conversation from my perspective. It's not what we're here today. Today, we're here to talk about from the male perspective. Just give us a little bit of insight on where the man is in the psychology of relationships. What's important? What's most important from the male perspective?
Ooh, let me think. And I guess I should give a disclaimer. Um, I want to speak in generalities. So, not one shoe fits all. But I think that in general, what is most important for men is to feel and be respected. One of my favorite pastors, Crawford Loritz said that, and he was speaking mostly to being married, but I'm going to kind of use marriage and significant relationships synonymously. But he said that, your husband may be an idiot, but he's your idiot. And so respecting him means that, you don't run him down in front of others, that you don't put him down, that there is that support. And I really feel that in addition to feeling and being loved, that respect is key for men. Um, Although it should be interwoven throughout the relationship and very reciprocal. Um, we men need that respect. As an African American male, we face a lot of pressures. We live in a society where, depending on what you do, someone's trying to take a chunk out of you every day. And when we come home or when we come into the context of our relationship, we need that support. We need to know that it's going to be okay. I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm learning as much as I can. But when I think about Samson and Delilah, it didn't say Samson got with her because she was pretty or she was voluptuous. It said that he got with her basically because he found a place to rest his head. And that says to me that the relationship should be a place of peace, It was once put to me that your significant relationship should be a place where both individuals feel safe and can be vulnerable and can grow.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think and I know as you were saying, kind of talking about marriages and those in long term marriages, but I think sometimes we forget when we first start even dating or when we start getting into relationships,
Mhm.
that spiritual foundation really that really is important, that needs to be a part of one's life. One of the things that we focus on a lot in the I Am That Woman movement and retreat is our spiritual foundation, meditation, prayer. That's how we start our day. Because oftentimes, and as I say it all the time, I think I quote it every week, that Bishop Smith always says, Horace Smith always says, if you meet God in the morning, then you can meet anybody
Yeah,
else,
yeah,
throughout
you're
the
in
course
it.
of your day. And so I think creating that for yourself, that when you do come into partnership and come into relationship, then you it comes from a place of respect,
Right.
and it comes from a place of honor, and it comes from a place of just having that godly mind of this is my husband, this is my significant other, or this is someone that I'm interested in, and therefore I want to respect this person because I'm respecting myself. Do
Mhm.
you find that sometimes men may lose that focus because of just wanting to be head of household, but not taking the role and ownership of what that means?
Ooh, I like that question. Let me start by saying that I believe that one of the greatest gifts that a man can give to a woman and a woman can give to a man is that love of God. God first. We have to put God first. And we can really look at an individual's relationship with God and with Jesus as a sort of tale of how the relationship would be, or will be, excuse me. I'm going to say a dirty word, and that dirty word is submission. And I just heard the collective gasp across the room. I ain't submitting to nobody. I'm just going to put it in this perspective of, if a man is submitted to God,
Right.
it is easier for his significant other to be submitted to him.
Mhm.
And when we think about head of household or head of house, it's really about leadership. And so if the head of house, i.e., the man, is not submitted and cannot follow a leader, then how can anyone follow him? You know, I love the way TD Jakes put it. And he says that, as a man and as the leader, if I run the car into the ditch, best believe and trust me to be able to get it out of the ditch. And so, one of the risk factors to conflict or to stressors in the relationship is when that relationship and that connection to God and spirituality begins to wane. Because one of the gifts that God did give us is that we have free will, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be a blessing and it can be a curse. And sometimes we do fall into our humanness. And as I heard it put, we get into our feelings. And not that feelings are wrong, feelings can be wonderful and they can be a gauge. But when the feelings and the emotions are leading the team, it is a recipe for trouble.
That's probably when it's going into the ditch.
Yeah.
Um, so again, that spiritual foundation. So talking about the psychology is, do you think that I'm a PK, right? And
Mhm,
so all of my upbringing was with a two-parent household, and
mhm,
we know that there are fewer two-parent households in today's society than there's probably ever been, right? And so, and also, I remember growing up, and even if the parents didn't come to church, they sent the kids.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I think, when we go to church, we don't see as many men as we do women.
mhm.
Speak to why you think our men are not, and it's not necessarily that you have to go to church, but it does create a spiritual foundation,
Mhm.
where you are. So have our men just fallen away from the belief system and from Christ?
Short answer, yes. Um, what I think is we live in a society that promotes self above everything else,
Mm.
and we've lost that connection. I'm just trying to think sort of broadly and globally. I'm a cops kid, by the way, and I was not bad. I was just mischievous. Um, and one thing I did and do appreciate about my parents is that they weren't very religious, but it was always a push and an emphasis on there's an entity greater than you, and that entity is God.
Mhm.
But I think in today's society, it is really that promotion of self. And when we look at God's doctrine for not only marriage, but how we are to be in relationship with each other, and the whole concept of unconditional love, that has to be learned. You
Mhm.
know, I think that people get intimidated by that. Like, wait a minute, this person just cussed me out. What do you mean I'm supposed to love them? Yeah, you got to love them and forgive them. And if we don't have those seeds planted early on, it is more difficult for it to grow and develop. I don't have children, but I have a 9-year-old great niece. I think I'm saying that right. She's my sister's granddaughter, so it's my great niece. And I took her to church with me. I think she's hung out with me every month since she was 4 months, and we would, pray for dinner. One Thanksgiving, I was not with my immediate family, but she was there, and I talked to my sister the next day, and she said, Autumn led the prayer for dinner. Seed was planted, and it manifested
Yeah.
at that point. And so I think that sometimes, what is happening now is. Many of the values, the traditional values that
Mhm.
are the core for relationships are no longer there.
Mm.
I'm going to date myself a little bit. So if you think back to the days of the cassette,
Mhm.
which were all the rage back in the mid to late 80s, and you had your dual cassettes and you could record. So you're my best friend and you just got this hot mixtape, right? So I make a copy of your tape, and then my friend gets a copy of my copy, and so on and so forth. With each copy, it gets more eroded. So unless you go back to the original source so that there is a clean transfer of that information, it degrades over time.
Mhm.
Um, I also, and this is not a knock at single parenting because that can happen for a number of reasons.
Right.
But when it becomes a core belief, it's problematic. And I'm going to use me because I don't want to get chased in my car this evening. Love my niece to death. And I know for me, I want her to know how she should be treated when she's of age, when she's 40 and dating,
Right.
what she should look for in a man. So I open doors for her. I will push her chair in, take her chair out. As a matter of fact, for her birthday in January, we had lunch at Blue Door Kitchen. Um, I treat her to getting her hair done. Not that it's an expectation, it's very different, but I want her to know what someone will do for her
Mhm.
and when they really care. Right?
Mhm.
And it just sets that tone so she will know.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's important. But those values don't get instilled. And going back to single parenting, when the emphasis is, man, I don't need you. I can go see my doctor and I can have a baby and I can raise a child without you. That's kind of a shot at the male spirit.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that women can't raise young men
Right.
and men can't raise young women, but there are just certain things that we can't do unless we are in that relationship.
I would agree 100%. I think, I have a play nephew. And so I tell him all the time, I can only help you so much. You
Mhm.
need some man advice. You need a man to help you to man up, because me as a woman, I can only give it to you from my perspective.
Right.
And perhaps that's a part of what's been lost, is that man, not only in the household, but the men in our community that we used to see at our community centers, in the church. I mean, and there's some great programs out there. I Am a Gentleman. Jermaine Anderson does an excellent
Part of
job.
that, yes.
Yes, right. Helping young men to shape and mold them into being
Mhm.
men. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And I think, to your point about our generations are starting to lose that.
Right.
And so they don't even know the psychology of a relationship and what it means to be a man. And especially if it's not, created from a spiritual foundation. And so that is, and how do we start to, go back to that original version? What are some things that needs to be done, in addition to, again, some of the social organizations, but what do Black men need to do to help our men?
We really need individuals to step up and step out. I love how Bishop Smith puts it. Your manhood and being a male ain't based on the number of babies you can create. Are you taking care of them? And it ain't going out buying, diapers and formula. It is being a permanent fixture in that child's life. But I think that we need those individuals who know to really step up, and not a knock at our athletes and our performers and our artists. They have a platform to use, but not everyone is going to become that. That's not everyone's destiny. We need individuals like a Jermaine, like the male mentors of I Am a Gentleman, like the male mentors in 100 Black Men, to really step up and step out and plant those seeds. I love being a psychologist. I love working with people. And my mindset is, I may not see the end result of my work today, but I know that I planted that seed and it's going to manifest itself down the line. Um, One of the things that I think is important is we cannot hold someone accountable for an experience they never had, right?
Yeah,
But once I show you and once I teach you, now I can hold you accountable.
right.
It's like learning dining etiquette. And we may have experience. You go out with somebody and they don't kind of know where the forks go or forks are. If they've never had that experience,
Right,
you can't knock them.
right.
But if we've been on 10 dates or 10 dinners and you're still, using your soup spoon to stir your coffee, we got a problem, right? So it's really important that we continue to do the work to counteract some of the, I'm gonna say, negative things or um, issues that are conflictual with how we are to be as men.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was so much into our conversation that I missed a question from one of our guests. So you were talking about being submitted, and you said, when you said the word, there's like, across the platform.
Right.
So Valerie Roberts wants to ask the question: define submitted to God. So many have different definitions of being submitted to God. So what
Mhm.
does that mean to you?
Great question. So there is surrender and there is submitted. One can surrender to God and come to Christ and get saved, get dipped, maybe double dipped, and hey, I'm a Christian. But are you submitted? Are you putting God's doctrine in front? I guess a low hanging fruit answer to that is, someone professes to be a Christian, go to Home Depot and purchase some paint and get back an extra $5 in change. Well, the right thing to do is to give it back.
Mhm.
Or do you pocket it? And if someone is saying, I'm a Christian and I'm following God, and God says, I shouldn't steal, I shouldn't lie, if I pocket it, I got to question your Christianity, you know? And so it is really, as it, try to tie things together, it is really following what God tells us as men to do and how to be in a relationship, in a marriage. if we are submitted and following God's doctrine, then we are going to do that in our relationship. And one of the things that God tells men, and I love Ephesians, is that we are to love our wives as we love our own bodies, right? And so if we have self-love and we are loving ourselves, because we're not necessarily going to do things to harm ourselves. And
Right.
I'm filtering out all of the variables, and we can talk about that too, what those things look like. We will then be able to love our wives or love that significant other.
That's good.
And I would say this, that love and being submitted means that even though I may be tempted, because let's be real, whether we are married in a serious committed relationship, so on and so forth, we ain't dead. And there's always temptation, right? It's like, yeah, I'm married, but I can look at the menu, just don't order.
Mhm.
And loving and being submitted to God and to the relationship means that, yeah, that might look good, but okay, keep going, right?
Good. And even Denise Campbell followed up with being submitted to his word.
Yeah.
So being submitted to God is being submitted to his word. I think sometimes, even as Christians, like you said, I'm
Mhm.
not a Bible scholar. I'm right there with you, not a Bible scholar. But I think sometimes we, may forget those basic principles, or we want to make exceptions to the rule. And
Mhm.
so his word is his word. The more that we're in his word and know his word, the easier it is for us to be submitted, and the easier it is for us to be in relationships and have good, again, spiritually foundational relationships that will be according to the will of God. All right, we're getting some great comments here. Kathleen chimed in. All right,
Thank you, Kate.
so so as you were talking about, and we started talking about, and Jeff says the secular's agenda to dumb down and emasculate men have created power struggles within the home, relationships, and society as a whole. How do we collectively fight? So how do we, even in marriages, even as a community,
Mhm.
kind of make a stand with who we are in our relationships. And so, and I know we've been talking about relationships in a marital type status, but even relationships in our community. So to that point, you talked about the athletes and the entertainers, and sometimes they can do it in our culture as well.
Mhm. Mhm. It excuse me. When I think about, well, what I'm going to say is, and this may sound like an oxymoron or something I just pulled out of thin air, but there is the ability and to fight fair. It's actually one of the books that I would recommend to the group and to anyone in a marriage or relationship, because you can fight fair. And it's really being able to keep the love and affection in the relationship, but fighting the conflict. Um, I'm always alerted when a couple says, "Oh, we don't have any conflict. We don't fight." And the analytical part of my brain goes, "Yeah, well, that storm is brewing. It's going to come." Because the reality is, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a partnership, whether it is a marriage or a dating relationship, you are bringing two different people
Yeah.
together, and there are going to be some differences.
Yeah.
I love me. I don't know that I want to be married to me, because just as I drive myself crazy with some things. So having to wake up next to me, like, nah. But you are bringing two people together, and sometimes after you've been together for years, the things that were cute and adorable can become annoyances. And so, how do you have that conversation without ripping the very soul out of a person? And it's an art. It's more art than science. So the short answer is learning to fight fair. The long answer is both individuals have to be willing to be vulnerable and to have those hard conversations. Um, Comparatively, let's look at boxing versus MMA.
Mm,
Right? Boxing is described as a sweet science. So that's fighting fair.
right.
MMA is just conflict. I'm gonna gouge your eyes out and snap your spine, and if you get up off the floor, good.
Yeah.
One thing that we need to realize is that Words can build up or words can tear down, and words do hit many times harder than a bullet. You know, that old childhood adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but
Yeah,
words will never hurt me. They may kill you, you know.
yeah,
So it's important that when we are fighting, that we attack the issue. What is the issue and not the person? You
yeah.
know, that's like, dude, I love you, but if you leave your stinky socks in the middle of the living room when you know my mama coming over here, we're gonna have problems.
And that was followed up by a comment that says we have to fight for the marriage relationship and not against each other. And I think that speaks exactly to
Yes.
what you were saying.
Hmm.
Is that
Hmm.
it's about the issue and not about the person. And sometimes we can attack the person and not the issue. And to your point, and also I think being careful about to Jeff's point about allowing the outside world, because the word even tells us that we're separated from the world. We're part of the world, but we're separated. So if we do have that biblical spiritual foundation in our relationships, in our marriages, then we really shouldn't be listening to society and what culture, especially common culture nowadays, when it comes to the entertainment and the music and
Hmm.
the influences on TV and movies. It's so much different now than what it used to be.
Right.
And so we do have to be careful. All right, that is some great comments and some great feedback.
Yeah.
um let me see. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing. I'm trying to manage my questions in the flow
Okay.
of the conversation. What would argue is one of the most significant resources to address trauma, healing, and recovery? And I take it, Ronnie, this is in relationships, but what would you argue is one of the most significant resources to address trauma, healing, and recovery?
Go to therapy. Get a third party. If it is at that level and you've tried taking steps and it's still not working, get a third party in there. Because sometimes we do need a person to mediate the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, as a therapist, have my own therapist. And, yeah, and as the kids would say when I worked in the school district in Houston, yeah, that's the guy that tells you whether you're crazy or not. Well, this guy that tells you whether you're crazy or not needs a guy to tell him whether he's crazy or not. So we can have that conversation because, again, we bring a lot into our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I will use my parents as an example. I love them. They have been married for over 50 years. And some things they have taught me very well and that are wonderful to bring into a relationship, and other things not so much so. And so I'm constantly thinking about how that impacts me or how it impacted me when I was, dating and moving forward in my relationships. One thing that they did teach me is that you stick it out. And that is a blessing. And sometimes it has been problematic for me because I wanted to stick it out. And I'm looking at this model of working it out. But if that's not reciprocated, sometimes I stayed in relationships a little bit too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just overall, not necessarily, you may not have to go to counseling, but have a trusted person that you believe in to be able to speak into that relationship. Now, I'm not saying go air your dirty laundry out
Right,
to everybody because that's a slippery slope.
right.
Because not everyone has your best intention in hand. They're looking for that dull spot on your arm. It's like, go ahead, boy, you have those problems. I got you. And next thing you know, you got a whole nother slew of problems. But we do need those individuals, and we have to surround ourselves with individuals who can speak appropriately to what's going on.
And I think too, and Ronnie, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, certainly follow back up. But I think to your point, we do have to be careful with who we allow in our relationships as well. And so who we allow to influence
Hmm.
our marriages, who we allow to influence our relationships when we're dating. You got to be careful when you're dating in a serious relationship and you go to your single girlfriends and you're sharing, with them about what's going on, and they're all single, and they want you to join back in to being single. So to your point though, we do have to be very mindful and very cautious. And I think again, making sure that we have someone that's given us that spiritual advice and that biblical
Right.
principle from the word. I hear Bishop talk about that all the time. If they're not able to come to me or to someone, who's in ministry, then what are they really trying to hide, right? And
Exactly.
sometimes people
Exactly.
want people who agree with them. And if you're
Hmm.
wrong and someone is agreeing with you, then you might not be getting the best advice for your marriage or for your relationship.
Right.
So,
And yet, you know what? I can't say it any better because that individual, that person who is grounded in God can help guide the relationship. Um, and we do too when and I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to get hate mail, but we really need to look and be careful of those people who are on the pedestal or in media they're out there because of their platform. Look at what their relationship
mhm.
look like. I'm sorry, if you ain't never been married, how you gonna tell me about what to do when I hit, you know, a trouble spot? Um, Early in my career, I would get that question as a marital therapist. And it's like, well, I ain't been married, but I've been in relationships before. But you get a different spin when you
Mhm.
go through that experience. And I'm not saying that a trained professional can't do it, but someone who's got a little bit more seasoning may be able to speak to some things.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I'm trying to get my questions in, but our audience is really engaged today. How does a spouse or significant other address past trauma with the one they love and encouraging them to go get therapy? What do you recommend? Because we know, that's a really good question,
Hmm.
actually, because in our culture, oftentimes getting therapy is like one of those things that we don't talk about,
Right.
we don't do, we're not crazy, but oftentimes as we're coming into relationships, as you said before, we're bringing our whole selves into somebody else's life, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so if they've had past hurts and pains, and oftentimes men, you said one of the most important things is respect. But
Hmm.
if men even haven't don't even know how to self-respect, then how can they reflect respect? And so
Hmm.
sometimes past traumas, hurts, pains, and challenges doesn't always bring that respect into the relationship, even love, right?
Hmm.
If you haven't been in a household that's really shown you love and been an example of love, and you really know how to express love, the relationship can almost be doomed from the beginning. So if you know my spouse really needs therapy, he really doesn't know how to deal with, his traumas and dramas, what would you advise for that spouse to do to try and save that marriage?
Okay. Um, let's take a 10,000-foot view and then get a little closer. I think first and foremost, um, in the dating situation or dating scenario, pay attention to red flags. Um, One of my flaws is that I tend to be a fixer. I will see it and I immediately want to fix it. Some things are not meant for us to fix. And so early in the relationship, and it's okay to have a checklist, there are some deal breakers out there. But know what is within your lane to allow that vulnerability, to allow for healing and allow for repair in the context of the relationship, but also know what's not yours to fix. There are levels of trauma that an individual, unless you've had specific training, you can't deal with it. And even if you did, ethically, you're not supposed to because that creates a dual relationship. And it can become a lot for an individual to contain. When I think back on some dating experiences, there were some things and the intent was good, that were revealed to me, but it was like, wow, I don't know what to do with that, right? And so I say that to say, once that door is open, have a hard conversation or a tough conversation. Maybe we need to seek some outside help. In my own mischievous, rebellious spirit, I grew up in a household where mom and dad said, "You don't take our problems outside of the house." I was like, "Okay, I got you." And here I am, a psychologist, right? You know, um, One of the things, particularly with trauma, but one of the things that gives um, problems strength is silence, right? If we don't talk about it, it becomes the elephant in the room, or it's like the
Yes.
kid that accidentally sets their bed on fire. And instead of running out the room saying, "Hey, there's a problem," they close the door. And next thing you know, the whole house is burned down.
Yes.
So gently, lovingly have that conversation like, you know what? I love you. I'm concerned, but I don't know how to handle this. We can go get help. And
Mm,
it's okay because you know what? No one in this life, and I don't care who they are, got to where they are on their own.
mm.
There was some support, whether it was behind the scenes or in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Have
Very
the tough conversation.
have the tough conversation. All right. Music has blurred the male image of relationships a lot, male and female, actually. What's a good resource or book that you would recommend to educate young men about their role in a relationship or how to treat females? Great question, Jeff.
That is a great question. Um, the mind is like the body. What you eat is what you are. What you feed your mind is what you're going to eventually display in your relationships and in your life. And I would recommend one of my favorites is the Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It really talks about helps the individual to learn what their love language is, and mine is words of affirmation. So I know how to, hey, I need to be told good things about me. But whereas another person's maybe gift of touch, the gift of gifts, that kind of thing. But it sets a nice foundation so you can have that communication. I am thinking of another book, and I did not write the title down, but I would start there. Um, but more importantly than reading a book is to connect with someone who's more senior, someone who's been married for 15, 20 years. Have that conversation because we need to rewrite the script of what healthy relationships look like. We need to have that dialogue about what healthy relationships look like. And just because there's music out there, we don't have to listen to it.
Yeah,
um,
I truly believe that cross generational help
mhm,
can be good. I actually, the retreat was founded and kind of started from me having celebrating my 43rd birthday with 43 women who I got in the room to talk about, our health, our wealth, and, cross generations. And I think oftentimes, just like you were talking about the time that you spend with your great niece, I think
mhm.
oftentimes we need to spend time with our younger family members and just having conversation with them because, to Jeff's point, they are so being influenced by music and by entertainment. And so I think it would behoove us to spend some time with our young people. As you said, I know Jeff is asking for a book, and I think Ronnie shared a book as well, Sources on Healing Trauma,
Yes.
Trauma and Recovery, the Aftermath. Go ahead. Yep.
Oh, I was just saying, I love the internet. Feed my immediate gratification. So one of the it's a little technical and heavy, but it's good and thorough. How to Get the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix. That is a great book because it really speaks to what we need to do to get the love we want out of relationship. And I don't care how tough a person appears or is, we all want to and deserve to be loved.
Yeah.
Um, and there's another book, I think it's The Five Agreements. While it does not speak to romantic relationships, it speaks to things that are pertinent to relationships.
That's good. That's really good. All right. So, and Tony Evans, Kingdom Man, also was on there. And let's see, we have Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, which is the one that you also recommended. So,
And I
these,
do want to say there are various versions of the five love languages. So there's a love languages for teens. There's a five love languages for parents. So there's a whole series, and that really lays a nice foundation.
good. All right. Let me see if there's any other questions out here before we go on to our next question. All right, these have been, usually I'm flowing in conversation. Our guests have been like, um, all right, Kathleen said her love language, because it is important for us to know ourselves. I think oftentimes we miss that sometimes. So, so when go ahead.
I do want to say, you know what, you just touched on something. It is important to know yourself. I agree with that. One of the things that I would tell my interns when I was a training director is I don't care about how much theory or your academic performance because you wouldn't be sitting in that seat if you didn't already have that. My focus is on you becoming more self-aware, because the more self-aware you are, the better clinician you will be. We can apply that to our relationships, because the more you know about you, the better you're going to be in that relationship. If you know what your hot button issues are, like, okay, you can, let that run throughout the relationship and have that conversation. So I think it's important. So insight and self-awareness are very important.
Insight and self-awareness. All right, we're going to take a commercial break real quick, and I will be right back. I'm going to remove you. We're going to continue our conversation. But as you guys know, the I Am That Woman retreat is coming up. And for our commercial break, here is our promotional video. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that commercial break for the I Am That Woman retreat, returning in October. We are also returning with Dr. Garner. We've had some amazing conversation today about the psychology of relationships from the male perspective. Oh my gosh, our audience has definitely been engaged, asking great questions, and you've done a great job of answering them. We're going to be wrapping up this show because I know that I don't want to hold you too long. But, just as we're talking about relationships and the psychology of relationships, what would you encourage any man who's watching right now, who may be even having some difficulties in their relationship? I know you have advised to seek help, seek counsel, seek wise counsel, seek therapy. But for and my sister even asked the question before I forget, what can women do to help strengthen our men today in our relationships?
Okay, a couple answers. I think, well, first and foremost, be encouraging. And I'm not saying blindly encourage, but be supportive and encouraging, because I think it's easy to fall into that trap of what looks like encouragement, but it's actually kind of a shot. But to just stand behind and support. I think loyalty is important. I'm not saying blind allegiance, but knowing that, I think for men, knowing that, the car, A, B, and C are not more important to me goes a long way. And sometimes we do need a push. I think that for women, know this, and I'm probably going to get my man card pulled for saying this, but that's all right. Men will become very comfortable very quickly if we are not pushed. And we see that in a lot of relationships where a woman gives husband benefits to a boyfriend. And it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to get married. And it goes from 1 year to 15 years, no ring, no marriage. Well, there's no motivation. And so we do need to be nudged. We do need to be challenged. We do need to be pushed. But that comes through having that supportive conversation. And I think the first question slipped my mind.
I started with, it may have slipped mine too, because I saw that question pop up and then I did not address it. So I wanted to make sure that I asked that. And then I lost it. I was going to put it on. That's all right. Okay. So that's some great advice for as far as what women can do. Even in
that's what it was. What men can do. So I am a big advocate of educating yourself. Read. find healthy articles, whether it is by a well-known pastor or whether it is by a guru in relationships, not self-help. Self-help books are dangerous. But books by Gary Chapman. Oh, why is it slipping my mind now? It'll come to me. But those resources that talk about healthy relationships, so that you have a foundation. Because if mom and dad did not provide a good enough model, then you don't know how to be in a relationship.
Right.
So as you talked about at the beginning of our conversation, um, if I've never been shown love, then I will not know how to show that.
Right.
Or if my model has always been, well, I watched my dad go to work every day and come home and cut the grass and then sit in his chair and watch TV, then I'm more likely to do that.
I think that's a great question to ask in a marriage, in a relationship. Like, what's your model? What does that look like to you? For I think communication is so key to a successful relationship. And sometimes you have, my sister talked about the introverted communicator and the
Mhm.
extroverted communicator. And so sometimes we internalize, what we're really feeling. And it's really
Mhm.
hard. Is it hard for, I'm not going to say it's hard. I want to ask the question from the male perspective. Is it hard for a man to express how he feels and to be open about his mental and emotional wellness?
It can be a challenge because, we as men are taught not to express or show emotion. However, it's okay. I think it was a book, Men Cry in the Dark. Well, and I think now more men are crying in public. Um, so we have to learn that and know that it's okay, because we were given feelings and emotions for a reason, and we should be able to use them. But remember, going back to what I said before, that relationship has to create an environment where it is safe to do so. So I can be vulnerable and heal, or I can be vulnerable and grow. Um, and I think that that comes in with going into relationships, both men and women, with eyes wide open. Um, I will say this, and we're probably going to get another collective gasp, but I am a mama's boy, right? I'll wait. Right. Not in the sense that I could not make a move or do things without consulting with mom, but I love my mother. And my mother has always been one where she was hands off my relationships. And her thing is, as long as I know that you are being treated well and you're okay, I don't have a problem. If she did pick up on something, it wasn't, I'm going to come between you and the person you are with. I'm going to ask you how you're doing. And she may say, well, you want to take a look at that. Some of the best advice my mother gave me, she was like, when you get married, make sure the person you married, you're on the same page and you have goals in common. And I will refine that, because not, someone's goal or dream may not be the other person's cup of tea,
Mhm.
but can they support and encourage that dream?
Right.
I think about the movie The Astronaut Farmer with Billy Bob Thornton. And
Mhm.
dude built a rocket in his garage and launched himself into space. His wife was supportive, but she was like, "We got bills to pay, and you putting it. We got kids to feed." That's the reality.
Mhm.
And we all know the classic Rocky, that Rocky got his butt beat, but when Adrian stepped in the room and was like, "I'm behind you," it was a breath of fresh air, and he could take on what he could take on. But
Yeah.
that's really that's very, very important.
It is important. And I think, again, I think we lose sight of the importance of communication because, to your point, oftentimes men, and especially in our culture, just aren't taught to communicate. We so often see men just burying their feelings and emotions
Mhm.
and running away from marriages and running away from because they're not accustomed to going to get help or even asking for help.
Right.
They feel vulnerable. And so if you're not vulnerable in your relationship, then you're probably not open enough to get help. And so that's such an important part, an important role that men have to play, is taking on responsibility. So how does a woman even encourage him to kind of open up, or, have a discussion? If a person is really closed, what can they do in a marriage to try and help it?
Um, Gently coax it, get the dinner, the wine, the candlelight. We need to talk. Now that may scare some men, because when you hear those, like, uh-oh, what did I do? But it takes a level of patience, and it takes building trust. Because if the model that the man has been, you don't talk about emotions, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
But once that platform is set and it's known that it's safe to be able to talk and to be open, and it doesn't mean you're open with everybody, it means you're open in that context, because communication, as you said, is key. The only word that I would say that should not be spoken in a marriage is divorce, the dirty word. And I think that if a couple goes into a marriage with the mindset that divorce is not part of the equation, it'll work. It's not going to be easy. As it was once put, we never go to bed mad. We may have stayed awake many nights, but we never went to bed mad.
That's cute. There's a question here that says, you said men like to be nudged and pushed, but what if they perceive it as being bossy? Being independent women, or, strong Black women, we get it all the time, right?
Mhm.
Even we get it all the time, and so it's intimidation, but if a man perceives it as being bossy, or what can we do for him not to perceive it as being bossy if we want to nudge and push him?
The communication is more art than science. One of the keys to successful communication is making I statements and owning your position. Um, I feel, and I'm a clinician, and I still struggle with making I statements, but something like, I feel loved when I come home to a clean house, or I come home to dinner on the table, or I come home and the trash is taken out, versus, you better take the trash out before I get here. So really finding that love language, finding ways to communicate so that it is encouraging and not pushy. And sometimes you just have to draw a line in the sand. Um, and one of the things that's important about the perception is that it is that person's perception, which may mean there are other things at play, and that individual, that man, may need to seek additional consultation, support, education on how to deal with that.
That's good. And again, our audience is being so engaging today. Do you think most men have passive aggressive behaviors in relationships? Great question.
No. Anyone is capable of being passive aggressive. And it just dawned on me who that other author I was thinking of, John Gottman. He and his wife are like the super gurus of marriage and relationships. Um, I don't know the statistics in terms of people who are passive aggressive, but that is a learned behavior. And I would say that most men and most women probably are not passive aggressive. I do think we can stonewall, which is a way of deflecting the conversation, like we don't respond or we don't give an answer. But in terms of passive aggressive, I don't think there's a gender split. I think it just comes down to that person's experience.
All right, very good. All right, well, it's coming close to wrap up our time. Thank you so much. I think
You're welcome.
we've definitely addressed a lot today about the psychology of relationships from the male perspective. I appreciate all of our guests, Jeff, Shiree, Valerie, Denise, Kathleen, and any others. Ronnie, thank you for your questions and your insight. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Wanda, and many others who are on here. Dina, thank you guys so much for joining in the conversation. This is what it's a conversation series. This is what it's all about. It's about us providing you with resources and information on how to live your best life. And I hope today's guest, Dr. Garner, helped you in your relationship, maybe your perspective a little bit about how you are managing or could be doing better in your relationship, as this is
Mhm.
love month. So
Yeah,
express
very.
yourself. It's okay. Open your mouth and express yourself. What would be your closing words to the men out there who are in relationships who may be struggling? What would you encourage them to do?
Do not be afraid to seek counsel. Look at your relationship with God because that might be a gauge of what's going on in your romantic relationship. Strengthen your relationship with God. Get to know, God's doctrine. Um, the resources that we mentioned, grab them and read them. And this is a tough question to ask, but you can always ask, what is it that you love about me? What drives you up the wall? What gets on your nerves? And just be prepared for the answer that comes back so that you can make the change to improve the relationship.
Very good advice. All right. Well, thank you again. And for you all who want to, may need to get in contact with Dr. Garner, you can do that. His email address is right there, agarnerii@sbcglobal.net, or you can even reach out to him via phone or a text, 773-960-3859. Again, his email is agarnerii@sbcglobal.net. Give him a call, give him a text if you want to. If you didn't want to put something in the chat publicly, he is more than willing to at least address your concerns. 773-960-3859. We always want to have guests on here who are open to helping our community. That's what we are all about. We are here to help you live your best life holistically, mind, body, and spirit. And this month, we've been talking about our relationships because they're so important. Thank you again. I appreciate you taking the time. Don't go away. Stay right there. I'm going to
All
take
right.
you off screen as I make a couple of announcements. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Hope you enjoyed our short commercial break. As you guys know, we're coming back. Yes, Kathleen said, send your wives, your girlfriends. Maybe they need some time away to just refocus, reconnect, and restore themselves. So in October 26th through the 30th, you guys know what to do. Send them away to come and see us at the I Am That Woman retreat. We're going to be in the Marco Island at the Hilton. You can save the date. You can also register now. Just go to our website, IamThatWomanRetreat.com. You don't want to miss it. World renowned speakers. We've had Susan Taylor, Kim Coles, Tracy Edmonds, Linda Johnson Rice, Connie Lindsay. I can go on and on. And this year isn't going to be any different. We're going to be announcing some of our speakers soon, so you don't want to miss that. So make sure that you sign up for our retreat. We have some specials going on, some early bird going on. It only requires a $300 non-refundable deposit. And we have a payment plan, so you don't want to miss doing that. Also, you know how we do it, prayer and meditation. It's so important that you start your day in prayer and meditation. If you meet God in the morning, you can meet anybody else the rest of the day. So every Monday through Friday, it's just a conference call line, 5:30 a.m. To 6:30 a.m. Central Time, 605-313-5104. 605-313-5104. This community is growing. It's a safe space. So don't feel like you will be judged. There's no religion that you have to be. It's just a place for you to come and get some renewed strength in your mind, body, and spirit. Access code 345235. It's on all of our social media. We're here for you. Dr. Lockett joins us every Monday morning and leads us into prayer. So I pray that you will be encouraged, because there's many testimonies about how it has helped so many people. So that's what we are here to do, to help people like you. Have a very blessed weekend. Again, happy birthday to Tyree. Happy birthday to Lester and anybody else who had a birthday between the February 1st and February 18th. Happy birthday. We want to celebrate you. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed today. Have a very, very blessed weekend. Be safe and protected and stay warm. Bye-bye.